We're just past 9:30. Tuesday, April the 23rd. Thank you all for being here for this special meeting of the Finance Committee. We're missing a couple people. The objective here, obviously, Adam's been in the loop. I swapped some messages with Lauren this morning, so we'll keep her in the loop too. She couldn't be here. We're here to discuss the fiscal year 24-25 budget summary, as well as the narrative from the city that they've provided, and we'll dig in to as much detail as required.
All right. If you don't mind, I'll kind of run through this right then and just stop me. Obviously, committee, stop me if I'm glossing over something you want to talk about in a little bit more detail, or if I'm talking too much in detail about it, that you're just good with it, and we can move on, then we'll go through there. We do have a 2-page. We have a quick summary here at the beginning. Just one thing I do want to highlight about the revenue is that the mayor's proposed budget here takes the assumption of not raising taxes to hold the rate as it is. Joe and I've obviously had many discussions on this, just looking at the projected revenue and our expenses. We do have a lot of projects in this budget. We have a lot of projects over the next few years, and just taking a holistic view of all of it with us changing the street program this year, that definitely factored in, and just along with our projected revenues. We're trying to get the revenues a little bit closer to what they are. We're constantly just trying to get as close as we can without obviously coming under we look at. So we're comfortable holding the rate this year. I think that's a good decision. And then of course we're going to reevaluate every year. These next few years are going to be really important. I talked about this last year. For me especially, this is my second budget that I think this is the second one that I've actually put together with Joe. So I'm still trying to narrow some of the scope down. Joe did a really good job at reorganizing a lot of this. This is our first year with Springbrook, which has been a huge help for not only Joe and I, but the department heads to know what their budget is, to know how much money they have left and what they can. So we're really excited on that part. Additionally, when you're comparing this year's budget to like the last two, if something looks off, just bring it up to us, because we have been doing some reallocation and trying to clean things up to kind of set a standard moving forward. So it won't always be like that, but I think we're definitely in a much better place than we were last year and in the year before. We're still going to have probably another 2 years to get to where I want to be. Next year we should be pretty solid, but I'll try to give myself an extra year for some cleanup. So if you look at, with that said, if you look at the estimated fund balances with transfers, the general fund, the top sheet, I do want to go through a couple things. We're working hard to get these, like I said, the revenues, which is, if you look in the column to the right, the fiscal year 24-25, which is what we're working on. Those are our estimated revenues with our projections on increase. If you go down to expenditures, though, that's the 14.7 right now. That's the number I want you kind of to focus on. We're trying to clean this up to where this is truly our operational budget. So if we get into a tight year where we can't do any projects, we're just going to hold what we have. So to keep everything at the same standard, that's what I'm looking to do with all these expenditures. So all the other projects, things like that, we're moving into a capital, things like that, just to make it clean. That way, if we ever just have a tight year, just, council would say, just hold what you have, don't knock through sidewalks this year type of thing. Hold the standard that we have, and then we can focus on some bigger projects next year. So that's something that we've been really focusing on, trying to get the departments to keep just truly operational budgets in that, and then we use capital expenses for the rest of it. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Because before we've included vehicles, sometimes some projects, and it doesn't make it apples to apples year to year when we do that. So I think this is a good way to do that. You'll notice our transfers for revenue and then transfer out or higher. We did get approved, the state approved the $5 million for the Tower Park project. That is split over 2 years. The only challenge is they had to pay it out to the city of Fort Thomas and not the school. I'm sure that was a political move. Regardless, we're going to have it'll be a pass-through. So July 1st, we should get that funding from the state, and then we'll be passing that through to the school.
Matt, just so I'm clear on that too, so the transfers in, 2.5 million of the 6, is that state funding this year?
Correct.
And then we'll see that again next year?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. But again, we brought that out just into the transfers and reserves, so it doesn't throw off all of our other revenue numbers and things. So we try to keep that, because we're finally getting to a point where we don't have that ARPA and all the other crazy revenues that doesn't accurately depict the city. So Joe did a lot of work on trying to figure out how to do that without kind of impacting ours long term. Because the sooner we get to a normal budget, it's easier to look year to year. So if you look down here at expenditures, the transfers out is 3.5. So 2.5 of that is the school, and then 1 million of it is for our debt service. So that's to pay the bonds every year. So that's what that number is. Up in the revenue, transfers is 6 million. So that encompasses all of that, up to and including our 3.7 capital projects this year. So that's what makes up that 6 million. Any questions on any of that? Okay, so something we talked about last year when we were talking about the tax rate and things. One thing Joe and I added to the bottom of our general fund balance sheet here or fund balances is restricted funds. All right, so historically we've done restricted funds with our debt service and then our KRS.
It was a pension reserve.
A pension reserve. So that's been the thing probably the last 5 years about how we're underfunded for the pension and how some of that liability goes to the city. That's a number we decided not to put in this year. It's a squishy number. It's a number, we might have to pay, but realistically, I'm going to bank that we're not. So I just took that out. And we could put that in there and make our reserves look smaller, just as a possibility. But I just decided to just take that out and let's only add that in if we really think it's something that's going to happen. So just with the understanding that there is, we're underfunded, even though they've lowered our rate the last 2 years for retirement, which I don't understand, but I'm hoping people down at the state know more than I do about finances, and that makes logical sense. So just so you know, that's a difference from last year.
Did you line item that somewhere else?
No.
Keep track of it?
No, it'll be a part of the audit, but
Yeah.
that's correct.
Yeah, they're always as a part of the audit. We're required by, it's actually a government accounting standards board requirement that we show what effectively our unfunded pension balance is. It's some terrifyingly large number, but not one, as Matt said, that we're going to get a bill for.
So in the past, that wasn't necessarily a reserve that we had, it was a liability?
Correct.
Effectively a liability, yes. I mean, it showed up as a reserve. We actually had money set aside for it, but we treated it as a liability, as a restricted fund.
Yeah, and again, we could add it in there if it makes council more comfortable. I think the real number is what, 34 million?
It's north of 30 million, yes.
So this was a portion that, because there was a time when Governor Bevan was in, and we were discussing the pension that the cities were going to have to pay into it, and it probably should have happened. But again, smarter people than them decided not to. So
What qualified to put these in restricted funds? What did you choose?
these projects?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get into that here in a second. So part of what we did last year, and my explanation that wasn't in writing, was all of the things that are in my brain and Joe's brain and our spreadsheets and our future plans. And that wasn't added into this. So I think that was a good add this year. So we went ahead and added for the future planned expenses. So the only things I added in here were expenses that we've discussed with council that I've gotten positive feedback on, that either we've planned out, that we know we're going to do, nothing that I thought was wishy-washy with council, like they weren't sure if we were gonna do it. So there's other projects, there's plenty of other ones that I haven't included here, but these are the ones that are either up in the next 1 to 2 years. So nothing, I haven't gone out, I don't think it's appropriate to go out any farther than that. So for these, again, could add more, and at this point, council could also reduce them if things have changed. So we'll go through here. The top one is just a placeholder for the police fleet. You know, we discussed that, possibly having the take-home cruisers, something I didn't add into this budget quite yet, but I just want to make sure we're all out there for that. Fire department ambulance is definitely something that will be included, I'm hoping, in the next budget, if hopefully not this budget. We have a 3.5-year-old ambulance that to date it's been off the road 40 days this year alone, just this calendar year. It's been towed out of the bay twice in the last 3 weeks. It's a diesel, which we will not buy a diesel again. That's the majority of the issues is the sensors and the regulation for that. So we've been driving Newport's ambulance, Southgate's, and a few others. If you've seen that in town, our guys driving it, that's why. I am still going to try to hold to our plan, which is to add it for next year, against Chief Amon's pushing me, but I think we can squeak another year out of it, and we'll just see how it goes. But if it gets to a critical factor, just to let council know, that might be something that we take a look at earlier.
What's a 3-year-old ambulance worth on the secondary market? Nothing?
I mean, essentially nothing.
I mean, no fire vehicles are worth anything on the secondary market.
I remember buying this a couple of years ago, and the thought was we're gonna have it for a while.
And that certainly was the goal. The purchase was probably a bit short-sighted in the fact that we probably should have nickel and dimed the one that we had and waited for the gas model to come out. The gas models are far less maintenance intensive than the diesel models, and we just pulled the trigger, quite frankly, too early on that one for whatever reason.
It was one that was on a lot, so we didn't have to build.
And that was part of it.
So it was there, and Chief, before he retired, wanted to get that in service. So I mean, there was a bunch of factors. I'm not questioning anybody's at the time. I'm sure it was a good decision at the time.
The old ambulance was a diesel ambulance as well that was doing the same thing. It was a problem already, and it was a larger over-the-road one. It was a good choice at the time. Now, that said, we did sell the previous one, I think, for about 20 grand, which is a pretty terrible return on a $200,000 piece of equipment, but we could possibly get more out of this one. But I can't speculate on how much we get.
Yeah, okay.
I've got a question about just some of these itemized future expenses. I like the way that you've done this here. I think it's much more clear. You have briefed council on all of these, so that's great. You mentioned these are planned for potentially the next 1 to 2 years, right?
Correct.
Some of these could happen in fiscal year 24-25, correct?
They could if everything lines up.
And if, in that circumstance, just from a process, I just want everyone to understand the process. Let's use the police fleet, for example, $600,000. If that were to come up this fiscal year, does that come before council?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, everything on this list, you guys have not approved.
Right, that's
This
what I
is just a placeholder. So none of this on this future, the restricted funds, I'm asking,
Right.
yeah.
That's what
Any of these items I would bring to you first for approval. These are just placeholders, these are just future planning things, just to make it easier for council to take a look. When you're looking at the full budget, you can see what we have on the burner to move forward. I think that's a good point.
So for example, if the ambulance continues to have issues, that could come up this year.
Correct.
At any point in time.
If it does come up, my assumption will be I'll ask for the full amount with understanding that we're going to order it and it won't be here till the following year anyway. But still, knowing that you guys would give me the money to do it, then I know I can order it. And so when it comes in, it's not a shock. But I think that would be it, is just to order one and have it ready for the next fiscal year. That would be correct. Yep.
And then that would be a budget amendment at that point.
Correct.
Anything below the line here.
Yes.
Is not really part of the budget now.
Yep. Just like normal, I would bring it to council and I'd ask for a vote just to approve me to spend that money moving forward. Just like every other project we've done, just like a pickleball, I wouldn't have spent that money. Even though I knew it wasn't going to come out of this budget, I wouldn't have spent that or started that process without council's approval to move forward.
Well, and yeah, and I could continue to do this in the future years, which I think is great because this is a fluid list, right?
Correct.
So it'll change. Some things will be subtracted, whether because we completed them or decided they weren't necessary. Others will be added. So it'll give us kind of a better, longer range view of what are priorities for the city, even though they're restricted funds. We'll have those restricted funds in the event that we decide to move forward.
Correct. Yeah, and my goal is just, if nothing else, if you guys can hold on to that top page, it'll give you a whole lot of information, hopefully 80% of the budget, just to explain an overview of what citizens are asking, or if you're meeting with people, can kind of give you an idea of revenues, expenses, and then future projects that we have in the hopper, along with the fund balance. So Highland Park, we've got the skate park that I'm still having issues getting with the state on that grant that we got approved for the 125. I have not had any feedback from them. They did have one of their grant writers pass away in the last 2 months, which I'm assuming is part of that reason. But that will be a part of that. We've also been talking for years about redoing the playground, which if the skate park goes there, it'll be moved to the other side anyway, which we've discussed. Carlisle Park development.
So where's it, back on the skate park? So the original number, if I recall, was 250. There was a 125 grant potentially, and then another 125. What's the 350?
Realistically, it's going to be more. I just know how the projects go. So that's just the realistic number probably of 350 if council approves it once we get a plan. Again,
That's not net of the 125 though. That would be.
that's included. Yeah, because we have to pay the full amount even though we'll get that back.
Okay.
And then we also have, apart with that project, the skate dads are ready to fundraise. Council isn't comfortable with anything more. But again, this was, with these grants, I'm not going to go through the whole process of building out what it would be before I get the grant, because if we don't get the grant, we probably wouldn't have done it. So right now, we've met with 3 or 4 designers right now who would do this. So they're giving us, around that 300,000 realistically, but we all know just with niceties, everything else. But additionally, if council was only good with a certain amount, even though we'll get the donations, it'll still need the full amount to come out of our funds, even with that revenue. So that's why I've included that. But we are working right now to try to get some designs and get prepared for a bid to see what the cost is going to be. But again, I don't know timeline from the state right now with the grants. Typical grants like OKI grants, they're 3 years out before you'll get money. I don't know what this one is. It could be ready this year. I don't know, but that's something I'll bring to council as soon as I know.
How long do we have to, once that's approved, to use it? Don't know.
And I've left 2 voicemails at the office. I've contacted 3 grant people down there. One that passed away, and I've had zero response from any, which doesn't make me feel good.
So you have to spend it to get it?
Right. Yeah, it'll be a reimbursement.
Right.
Right. So, and that's not even in, that's not in our revenue for reimbursement. It's not an expense right now. I think it's inappropriate for me to put it in here because I don't know if these grants, I wouldn't think it would be paid out this year, honestly. If it was a grant, I think it had been approved last year. This year would be the planning and design, and the following year would be construction is how I would do the grant myself. So I'm making that assumption right now until I get more information.
Well, I think that's a smart way to do it. In the event when we do move forward on some of these that involve grants, depending on how the grant shakes out, we get reimbursed X amount of dollars. Does that money go back into the restricted funds?
General funds.
It goes back in the general fund.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, say it did, for some strange reason, happen this year, there would be an amendment for the additional revenue as well as the amendment for the expense that you all would approve anyway. So.
Okay. And these are all good questions. I'm glad you're bringing them
Does that
up.
fall under transfers in that point, or is there a different line?
Probably federal and state grants, most likely. I think is where we would classify that. That's normally where they end up.
Oh, that you can see it up there, thanks.
So in talking about our reserves, should we have a projection of what we would like the reserves to be at as a percentage of annual expenses, where we can actually get to a number where, maybe some of these projects could happen earlier if we're still at a certain percentage of our operating expense?
The answer is yes. I do like to have guidance from council. You and I talked about this a lot last year. I like to have 3 to 6 months of reserve, 3 to 6 months of operating expenses reserved, and I think you're on the lower end, I'm on the higher end, of course, because it makes me more comfortable, and I get that. But it is good to have council kind of give guidance to staff, hey, this is where we want to be. But with that said, these projects are not about money, they're about staff capacity and planning and everything, because I don't like to rush projects. I mean, the pickleball is one that was rushed, in my opinion. Like, I like to do a lot more planning for these things just to make sure. So that was kind of an off. So a lot of these, I really want to make sure we do a good job doing the analysis on it, doing the plan before we bid and fund it. So, yeah, that's just, I mean, I think the pickleball is ready to go. I may not have, that was last week with all the budget on there, but our numbers came in good. It's about 375 is what it's going to look like. 475. 475. Sorry. 475. Sorry about that. But it's not 6 because
We have 6 in the budget, right?
we had 6 in the budget, and that's one thing I just reduced compared to Friday when I sent this out. Originally, we have made some adjustments, and that was one that I adjusted because 500,000 is going to do it now. But the week prior, the reason I was really nervous the week prior is we put that tennis court bid out for the paving around there, and that came in at $94,000 for that pad, which I rejected. Pending council discussion, that was one thing I had on here. I was expecting it to be 50,000, it came in 94. We are working with them to see if we can possibly rebid that or make any changes to get it lower. But again, that's one of those I couldn't accept it. It seemed like I don't want to do this project bid. And actually, one was 94, the other one was like 170,000. I mean, it was I think it was we don't want to do it, but if you pay me enough, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I don't like to approve those bids. So anyway, with that bid coming in, I was really nervous about the pickleball, but they came in real good. So
Does that include the advanced surface?
it does. It includes the sports surface, and I'm not going to accept the soundproofing right now. I had CT did an analysis, and it's really not going to help because of it only being 10 foot. We would have had to go up to 20 foot to even get the first story of the houses around, and that would require reinforcing the fencing to do a 20-foot fence. Because of that, when you put a sound barrier, if the wind will rip the fence down. So I've accepted the primary bid with the sport surface. So, and
How
that'll
many
bring
bids
us
did we have come in on that?
3. They were all pretty good. So regular was the low bid with the sport surface. And they've done a lot of them around here, so we've looked at that, so they know what they're doing, which is good.
And not to get too far into the weeds on the specifics, we can if you guys want to, but I'm curious about the soundproofing moving forward. I mean, something will have to be done, right?
I mean,
Are we going to play it by ear?
yeah, we're just gonna see how it goes, because with it not being lit, that might have some help, but yeah, there's just, I could go ahead and put in the 20,000 soundproofing, but from the analysis, it's not gonna do anything.
Right.
Could we put the soundproofing higher up the hill?
We don't own a higher up the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we're at on that. I think I sent it out to council for analysis. There's an attachment, I'm pretty sure I did when I got that in. So anyway, I was happy to hear that came in on that. Any questions about that? As soon as I get I'm hoping to have a pre-construction meeting here in the next 2 weeks to get a better timeline on when that will be.
What's our estimated breaking ground?
Until I get a pre-construction meeting, I don't really know. I mean, we're estimating it'll be done in September, but that does include the parking lot and everything else. It's not just a pickleball. Parking lot, sidewalk, everything like that. All the connectivity. Any other questions? I'm not trying to rush. I'll go through here. Okay, so Carlisle Park Development, this is the actual adding on. I'll be bringing this to council here in the next 6 months, just to plan. It'll be more of a passive park at this point, but I'll be bringing plans to council to take a look at that. We are going to be doing some armory upgrades, which we've already started doing some of those, and we'll have some of that in the budget this year as well. But some of the major improvements include an elevator. Like right now, we host senior games, and during the last senior games, we had seniors stuck twice on the ramp. The elevator doesn't work real well, so we had 2 of them get stuck during that. The elevator alone is between $400,000 and $600,000 that we need to put in there, and then to just really entry and just some of the basics is I'm estimating about $1 million from what our analysis is. Big picture, it'll probably be a $3 to $4 million project, but I am working on getting grants for that, with it being working with Red Cross to make it a Red Cross shelter, which it is right now, but to try to make that more formalized. But there are grants out there to help with that. So big picture, staff has been meeting in the last 6 to 9 months to review the mess hall and the armory. Since the city building's done, those are the 2 other larger structures that we need to focus on. So we've had some really good meetings, good estimates, just to improve all around. So the mess hall and the armory there's going to be a lot of improvements this budget. It'll be a lot of improvements for next budget, but then this will be like some larger improvements. Right now, even though I really wanted to get the intent was to get an elevator put in this budget, there's just too many what ifs right now, and I don't want to put it in the wrong spot. So I want to make sure we do a really, which is why I like the plan, I like to do a really good analysis on where it could be. There's 2, we've narrowed it down to 2 locations, but that does depend on council's view of our plan. And just the initial plan is where that main hallway goes front to back, right? We want to keep that open. Essentially everything else will be taken out, and we will make 3 to 4 separate rooms down that hallway that can be rented out. That'll have its own code, so each one can be utilized while that whole area is open. And then of course improving the bathrooms to make female, male bathrooms at the end. So that's just like the overall vision of what we're looking at. We've talked to the school even to see what their needs are in the future to be able to utilize that space for classrooms and technology and things like that. So we've had some really good discussions from staff. We have a really good, I'd say, initial plan right now. And then once we kind of narrow that down, then we'll kind of present to council and get their feedback on, if that's too big for council, we can always tone it down. But it's the elevator is long overdue with all the events that we have there.
With the armory in particular, some of these funds that are saved for future expenses, can you talk a little bit, are any of these going to incorporate any of the mechanical, the boiler that I'm talking about in particular?
Yeah.
I remember we had to cut a pretty big check just for boiler repairs, and it was alarming, the size of it. And then talking to Joe, it's like, well, this is kind of it's not unusual. The boiler requires this type of work, and if we can avoid having that expense every year, which is hard to predict, that'd be nice.
Right, and that's, honestly, that's a lot of the $1 million is the elevator and just electric. I mean, the electric itself, it's running off 1 meter right now and is way under, we definitely need to add at least a second meter. So there's just the $1 million is really just basic to get things at a bare minimum. But and I didn't put more in here just because I don't know. There's just a whole lot of unknowns, and again, I think it's more than 2 years out. So these numbers are realistic, in my opinion. I just kind of want to give everybody an update on that moving forward. Riggs Park Playground is one we've talked about since I've been here. We've had residents talk about it. It could use an upgrade. It's nothing that's pressing immediately. It might be a 2 to 3 project instead of a 1 to 2, but we'll kind of just see how things go. I have a playground vendor coming in that'll be able to give me a much better number on Highland Park and that one. So if, along with that vendor, if doing them both at the same time would be a savings or something like that, then I'd like to entertain that. If not, we'll probably push Riggs back another year or 2. We are continuing to work on the staircase for 18 North parking lot, the parking lot behind there, so that is a placeholder in there. We still have a lot of, essentially I have held the city right now until the village players, until we work a few things out. I mean, we're ready to move forward when they are, but there's a few things I need them to guarantee me before we move forward on that. So that is something I expect to come up in the next 6 months from council and probably add it to the budget. But again, I'm just shooting right now, and I don't feel comfortable putting things in the budget unless I'm really confident in the numbers. So that would be one to bring up. And then the Midway underground utilities, that's something that the analysis is in the budget this year to take a look at that. Most likely it'll be a $1.5 to $2 million project. I just left 1.5 in here because that was the latest number. And again, these are just predictions. So that's just another one in there. And then again, there's more obviously than this list. It's not all inclusive, but I think it's the realistic 1 to 2 year projects.
Are there potential grants involved there too?
Yes. So a few, let me take a look here. Like, the Armory is one I'm obviously looking for grants. Riggs Park will be one I'm looking for grants just because I think we'll be out of the window of just getting that land water grant. I think we'll be able to hit that again. There's another recreation grant that I'd like to try. Since we're not in a hurry on that one, I'd like to try to apply for that one. The underground utilities is one.
So the 1.5 to 2 million there, that'd be gross, just like you described before, and net of anything we get grant wise. Correct.
And that's a good project for a grant because there are so many levels of it. You know, there's this year the analysis, and then the following year would be utilities, and the following year would be construction. So you've got the time to work on all of that. So it would really be a good grant for that. Most likely an OKI grant, not for this year. This year we'll continue to seek out the Chesapeake sidewalk because I think we're in line for that to get approved this year. The following year is where I'm thinking this would be for OKI.
And high level at this point, what does the 800,000 in the stairway entail?
The entire project from the street down to the parking lot. There are a lot of utilities that need to be moved. There's a lot of coordination with the village players. I went down to Frankfurt a few weeks ago to discuss their tax credits that they're getting for this project, just to see if that's even a reasonable thing for them to do. Part of the ask is there's a door on the left side of the building that needs to be sealed up. So the side where the steps are, we can't have that open just because the ramp that's required, the steps that will be required off of that will just takes away the whole staircase idea essentially. Not to mention it'll elevate it higher, which is the problem that we're having right now is the elevation to be able to get 88 steps. Probably it's not 88 steps, but the standard of steps from the top down to the bottom, I mean, it's tight to be, because you have only this much space and you've got to get from here to here. So if we leave that door there, it'll just make that elevation even worse. And village players are receptive of it. Again, I just need it in writing. I mean, I just need to. I've had a few times where we've had these discussions and all of a sudden maybe they're forgotten or something else. So I need to make sure we lock them in if we're going to start this analysis. Any questions on these before we move to other capital projects?
With the step, does that include any of the repaving of that block back there?
No, we repaid that with last year's budget. It's nice. It's held, which has been kind of the word. We did some full depth repairs, even though we wanted to just try without it. But everything we've done back there is held, and it's in really good condition. So I'm very happy with how that turned out. We got a good bid on that, and went ahead and pulled the trigger, and I think that was well worth it because it's definitely a good lot back there. Now we just need to be able to get people back and forth without it being scary, because right now it's just that little path that I have to kind of go with it. So if I have to do that, then other people have to do it more probably.
Can we just talk about the debt service reserve number there? Like
Yes.
How we got that? I mean, obviously
That's how much we owe.
So that takes away, money or projects we could potentially do. So is that a covenant thing, or is that us being?
That's our bond.
conservative?
So every year that'll go lower.
Yeah.
If we paid our bond off right now, that's that number.
It's not necessarily a covenant, it's just sort of a standard procedure to some extent that we've done around here with all of our outstanding debt. So that, putting the outstanding debt in there dates back to, I guess, before my time here. It's just a worst case scenario. We're not going to write a check to pay the debt off, but we'd like to make sure we have enough to do that.
So it's more of a conservative.
For the most part, yeah.
And it's something that, our investments over the last 12 months have been much better on that money.
Significantly.
So we're going to be monitoring that. And kind of, I think we talked a little bit about this last year. But if we get to a point where we think the investments aren't making more sense, it makes more sense to pay it off as opposed to the investments, then we'll do that. I definitely think that we don't look at that for another 2 to 3 years and just take a look at the last 5 years. But compared to the last 2 years, this last 12 months, the investments have been much better to the point where this is where we're wanting to get to. And it only looks like it'll even get better, so.
And what's the maturity date roughly?
Oh gosh, it was a 30-year. Trying to remember. Dating from 2020. I mean, it's
So it's out a lot.
it's a while.
What's the difference between the interest and what we're making on the investment?
We're actually really close at this point. Our yearly, and it's not necessarily reflected here. I'll be really curious to see what that audited number looks like for 23, 24. So our debt service, I'm trying to think the numbers off the top of my head. I don't know, off the top of my head, I've got it sitting here.
About 450 or something, 480.
Yeah, actually, 700 was where I was thinking, about 700 a year in total debt service between interest and principal on it. But we certainly cover the interest easily. We're shy of it right now on a monthly basis by a little bit, but the gap is actually getting a lot closer. So, and like I said, I've got a number in here on the amended for interest investment revenue. I'm really curious to see where it ends because I think we're going to end up better than this number, and I think we're going to be really close. We're bringing in a pretty good amount of interest.
So in the future, I know it's restricted, but is it possible if we were in a bind to use some of that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's just to let you know that if we need to pay that off or decide to pay that off, that's the number. Because I know, I've had some council talk to me about that. So that's why it's in there. And after a couple more years, once we start, we can level out because how investments are going to go up and down. Once we can take a 5-year look back and take a look and see where we're at, and then that might be a decision in the next 2 to 3 years to pay that off.
That's something we talk about every year.
Every year, and that's good. It's a good discussion.
If we're not paid off, and the interest rate is at 30 years, we're where we are now.
Right.
I pay it
I
off.
mean, obviously, the goal is to at least be making the interest, right? Is if we're making more than the interest for investment, we're good, right? I mean, that's where we need to be. So, again, I'd like to have another 2 years to really take a good look back to see if this is making sense. And I'm very happy with the trend right now.
We've been historically, in my tenure on council, we've been very lucky in picking the right timing when interest rates were low to borrow money and interest rates are high to invest money. We've done really good with that. And I remember the first time we did the park, 20-some years ago or whatever, and we just hit it at the right time. The interest rates were low. We borrowed money. We had every contractor was looking for work, so their prices were really low. Everything just fell into place. So historically, we've done really well with that, and I'm glad that we focused on it. Because if all of a sudden interest rates drop like this and we're paying more, pay the stuff off.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, Joe, you moved some things around. So we moved some interest. We moved some investments, we moved some debt, and we combined some as well.
Right.
And because of that, we were able to, our debt service is the same, but we got the city building out as well.
Yeah, basically, we actually didn't have to allocate really any additional money. We took some debt that was being paid off and took some additional revenue and basically got a city building rehab out of it.
Okay, any other questions about the top sheet? All right, so the next two sheets are just the breakdown of revenue. So if you have any questions about that, or after the meeting today, want to understand our estimates or anything like that, by all means, bring it up to us. The mayor's office expenditures are there. Those are all pretty standard. I'm going to, this includes the 6% raise that's in the contract. There's nothing additional. Yes, sir.
Why were we getting revenue from animal control?
Because we used to run animal control.
Oh,
Yeah.
we just don't do it anymore.
Now we contract with this. When our animal control officer left, we gave it back to the county, and now they charge us about 25 grand a year.
25 grand a year, which is a
What's this deal?
screaming deal compared to where we were.
I've done way too much analysis on animal control services before Thomas. It's a huge room. So yeah, so the mayor's office, those are all standard. Same thing with finance department expenditures, standard just with the salary and standard operation. Police department, same, and then we'll go into the police department major line breakdown. So we've just kind of broken out all the big items there when you guys get to that. I'll highlight the big parts of it.
Am I not seeing the mayor's office expenditures?
It's there for the general.
Yeah, it's right at the big part.
Oh, got it.
So we can hop back to revenue really quick, just out of curiosity. So under licenses and permits, one of our biggest increases over the prior year is the payroll license. What's going on there?
So what that basically is if you look back at some of the historic numbers, we've, and it's part of the ongoing goal of getting our revenues a little closer to actuals. Traditionally, budgeting in the city of Fort Thomas consisted of underestimating revenues and overestimating expenditures to the point where we had a, let's say, healthy surplus at the end of the year. The goal here is to get us a little closer to realistic, and I've been doing it over the last X amount of years. Plus, there is we do actually see a 2 to 4% increase every year anyway in payroll tax, just due to general salary increases. The majority of our payroll tax revenue, or let's just say our two largest payroll tax revenue providers, are St. Elizabeth Hospital and the schools. So the schools are basically guaranteed a raise by the state every single year, so their salaries increase a little bit, and same ESC increases as well. So part of it is getting closer to actual. Part of it is, trying to show an actual increase that exists.
And you've done that with others. It's your third bullet point on the very top summary page. Is that what you're referring to? And you say
Correct.
You've increased to reflect actual revenues?
Correct. So you'll see an increase in insurance premium tax, an increase in net profits, an increase in payroll tax. All of those are getting closer to actual revenues. And in the case of net profits, we're actually, the previous year actually is a bit of an anomaly. There was a bit of a late payment on that. So we're actually getting closer to actuals in insurance premium and net profits. So those are pretty close. Sure. I've got some work to do on payroll tax, but we'll keep an eye on it.
Thanks.
And it's pretty typical with finance directors. They want to be as conservative as possible, and then some city administrators that try to push them to that uncomfortable level of more accuracy with the understanding.
I'm not sweating yet, so we're not where Matt wants to be. So.
Speaking of the finance department, what was the jump in the professional services?
In the finance department, hang on 1 second.
Under other expenditures?
Oh, from the original to the amended?
Yes.
I budgeted an additional $40,000 because I don't think the property valuation administrator billed us for our annual assessments. We pay $40,000 a year for assessments. I don't think they billed us last year. So I fired him off an email to say, I don't see an invoice, guys.
Was the jump from 2022-23 the software? What was?
Oh, that was software. Yeah, that was implementation costs. and it goes back down, again, that's one that I've had a little bit because we'd see some computer expenses that come out of there as well. So that one's still padded a little bit because I tend to be a catch-all for those things in the finance department for any of those expenditures. Plus, there's still a little bit of implementation cost for the software because we have some additional modules to implement too. So it's trying to catch everything else we have left. But yeah, the part of it, the $40,000 this year, original to amended is the fact that I think I owe the
So then,
TV.
the people that did the audit, like I know we've talked a couple times on how long it takes to get the audited amount. Is that, are we looking at somebody else or?
RFPs already out.
They're already,
We tried to get somebody else this year, but the people that we want, the good groups, were booked. So
Yeah,
we had to do our last group for another year, and then we fired off the RFP when they sent it to them. So there's two groups that we're looking hard at. And we just need a good group to come take a good look and start getting that passed.
Yeah,
It's definitely not because we didn't try. I mean, when we called, they're like, yeah, we can't get you. Because there's only a handful that are good in Kentucky, and the size of our city and budget, we need a good one. So,
Yeah, there are really 3 to 4 firms that handle, actually, there are 2 firms that handle
2 to 3.
that handle the lion's share. There are probably 4 firms total that really do it. So your options are, not every accounting firm does governmental audits. Your options are limited.
We'll get there. It's taking time. Any other questions? If you can go to the police department major line breakdown. That's after the police budget.
what was that technical equipment,
For which department?
the police department?
We'll go over that.
Yeah, those
All the breakdowns.
are the capital expenditures.
If you would, I'd like to just go ahead and do both. So if you can, yours is stapled, isn't it? Oh. So there's the police major line breakdown, and then there's a other department's capital budget. If you can pull that out as well, that's down a little deeper. Oh, you're right, okay.
Yeah.
If you can just put those two side by side, I'd like to just do all of the PD while we're talking here.
Where's so the one with the police, the major line breakdown for the
Yes.
police. What's the other one?
The other one is other departments.
Capital budget. That includes the police department, the fire department, and the rest of the city.
It's just easier to type.
separated my section.
Yeah. And we'll be tweaking this every year. I think this is a huge plus from last year for these sheets, but even next year we'll have it a little cleaner for you as well. We'll keep getting a little bit better to make it easier to look at. And Chief, since you're in the audience, you can yell if I'm misspeaking here for his stuff. So the major breakdown, the training and travel, that's all pretty basic, but just again, wanted you to know what makes up that large number. I've said it 1,000 times since I've been here. The amount of training that the PD does here is impressive, and their skill level is equally impressive, and it's because of that. You know, they do DT training just about weekly, every other week at least, and just all this stuff. So with the police department, you can't get enough training. They utilize their money very well. The technical section here, nothing extraordinary. K9 supplies, that's a new one. That's $6,000 a year. So that is really the increase of trying to, and that one that's going to vary. So next year we're going to take a look at it. I actually shrunk that from what Chief asked for, because I think we can do it for $6,000. But again, that's one that we're just going to have had a K9 for a while and just have to get used to what the costs are, which they are. Keeping bullet healthy is expensive.
It's a lot of dog food, man.
It is a lot of dog food. And we actually get the dog food to donate it, right?
Currently,
So,
yes.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we get donated, and it's still, I mean, this his teeth cleaning was expensive. Which we'll talk about that too. Don't think it's been budget week, so I haven't had a chance to come over and talk about that. But it's expensive, but again, it was an investment that we need to obviously keep going. And just because I say it's an investment doesn't mean I don't like dogs, because I get that a lot. It's, from my view, it's a training, or it's an investment, and it's a tool that the PD has. Ammunition, it's obviously the big line. Ammo is not getting cheaper, and with presidential elections, it usually gets higher. So, but they were able to get a decent price for that this year, and they do utilize it. They do shoot a lot, but they also train a lot with very little rounds at the same time. So, I mean, the last time I went down and shot with him, I mean, I probably only shot 100 rounds max, and that was an all-day event because they do a lot of training with just a few rounds, and not just to save ammo, but just because the repetition of everything. So it's not like they just go out there and shoot as many rounds as they can. They do a really good job at handling that. So forfeitures is something that, Chief and I talk about. The forfeiture account, that's money that comes from essentially drug deals and things that once the case gets adjudicated, revenue goes to the PD for their use on it. So everybody gets a little piece, Commonwealth gets a little piece, we get a little piece. So this is money that is dedicated, restricted just for police usage. And even within police usage, it's got to be equipment and things like that. It can't be for operational expenses. So this year, it's almost $18,000 worth of forfeiture spending, which is definitely up from previous years. And that is just through, Chief presenting his budget and trying to figure out things that I feel like are appropriate to use that money for, that maybe we can save some money from our general fund for it. So one is the less lethal launcher. That is a 20 millimeter tool that'll shoot foam balls. It's got multiple things that it'll shoot, but it's a long range device to engage suspects without having to use lethal force or to go hands on. We've had a few situations in the last few years which this thing would have been very useful for. There's multiple varies. You can have the foam ball followed by CS gas, so when it hits them, it not only knocks them down, but it also then puts OC on them. So there's a lot of different varieties of that. And that's one thing I think it's important to go ahead and try this year to see, make sure that the supervisors have that in their vehicles, and they have that option to prevent injury for the officers, prevent death for the suspect too. So it's a good tool. It's definitely something that's been out for a while, and I think it's time for us to go ahead and to utilize that, and that will come out of forfeiture.
Chief, do we offer council member testing with that less than lethal launcher?
Everybody's interested.
Okay, good.
Shoot candy? Yeah. We could do some. It's good.
Great for the parade, right?
T-shirts?
T-shirts. Yeah, that's not great. All right, so it's time to replace the duty pistols at the department, and that was one thing that the chief brought up this year, that he wanted to do half this year, half next year. I'm not a big fan of that, because when it's time to get new ones, everybody having the same gun, the same training, there's a lot of benefits to that. So you'll see in capital expenses, we also have 13 Glocks and holsters in capital expenses. We also have 13 in forfeiture. So discussing that with Chief, we decided to pay half of them through forfeiture and half of them through the general fund. That way we can do them all in 1 year and still not, beat up the city funds by doing that. So that's what that is.
What happens to the old firearms?
We'll get
It
it
is.
and trade it down.
Yeah. That's a nice benefit of it, is we do get a really good trade-in value of them, so it's not as expensive as it would be just to buy them outright.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a way to get rid of them easier. It's just we do a trade-in, which is one of the options in KRS for surplus. And you'll see that come across council's desk when it's ready to do that, just to approve that surplus.
Are they able to purchase their current pistol?
They are. Okay, so on to, you can keep both of those but just on the capital, let's go through the PD, since we're talking about PD budget right now. In the budget, we do have 2 marked cruisers and then 1 unmarked cruiser. I talked ad nauseum, I'm sure you guys are tired of me hearing about it, but our fleet is in desperate need of refurbishing. We have way too many cruisers out there that have way too many miles on them, that have rust on the bodies that are driving around here, and we need to start getting to a better rotation of replacing those vehicles. So we are asking for 3 as opposed to 2, which is normal. So those are all there. They all are available. We do have a good source, which a lot of cities have struggled with, but we've found a really good source that we won't name, who can get us vehicles before anybody else. So Chief has been driving around a vehicle without lights, so we're finally going to go ahead and put, he sacrificed his lights to spend that money on some other equipment back in the day. So we're going to go ahead and finally get Chief some lights on that car, so he can actually be a cop now. You're welcome. The Glocks are there. The rifle suppressors, this is the last year. We've been phasing that in over the last few years of getting suppressors on the rifles, so that'll be the last purchase of those. And then on to the large item, the handout that I gave you earlier, that's a memo from Chief to me. If you go ahead and pull that out and take a look at this. This is a large increase. Is it nice so I can pay myself one? 1 second, pull it up here so I can talk with you. That's the long version. Yeah, this was like a 4 to 6 pager that I asked him to do a 1 page on. So what this is, currently,
Do you need it back?
no, I got it now. Thank you very much. Currently, we are in need of replacing our tasers, which normally what would happen is we would purchase them and then we'd have to phase that in because it's just a lot of money to be able to replace them. They're starting to phase out. Taser won't work on the current ones that we have anymore because they are too far. So when you send them in for repair, they're going to keep them, and they say, we can't fix them because they're too old. So we're already into that situation where we need that. Additionally, our body camera, which we've been looking at for a couple of years, trying to figure out what the best solution for that is. And our current body cameras are not very good, especially compared to other agencies around us and just nationally. PD has done a really good job at getting these cameras, keeping extras on hand, and working on a shoestring budget for storage. Storage is the biggest challenge with these because, as you can imagine, recording on a 10-hour shift, that's a lot of data that we have to keep for records, for cases, things like that. So it's very challenging. So along with those 2 big needs, the taser and the body-worn cameras came along, and they've done research for Axon. Axon is Taser, that's their company. So we're requesting, and actually I'm going to be requesting this at the next council meeting, assuming they get some positive feedback from council, to go ahead and move forward on this because it's going to take some months to start up. But currently, we're spending about $20,000 a year on both tasers and body-worn cameras. That does not include replacing the full group like we are pistols right now, but that is just phasing in newer tasers. With this, we're looking to do a 5-year lease with Taser, which is going to be a $40,000 a year increase, and then I'll explain that. If you look at the second page there, the PD's done a really good job of letting you see the difference between our video and the video of Taser. So Southgate PD has Taser, the Axon body cameras. They've done a side-by-side on the exact same scene, the exact same time. So you're looking at, especially in the evening, what the difference is on these cameras. It's really important for cases, for any shootings that we would get. I mean, just about every shooting we've had has been at night, and they're pretty typical. And obviously, those are the ones you want to have very good video of, right? It limits our liability, limits the officer's liability. But as you see the difference, the pictures on the right is the exact same scene on Southgate's cameras, and then the pictures on the left are ours. So it is an incredible difference in video quality. Additionally, with our cameras now, sometimes they don't turn on, because it's one of those things when you're on a call that it works, it may not work. If they are older, they don't always turn on. The batteries do have issues. With this, it would come with a taser camera that is insured. If anything goes wrong with it, they fix it. Additionally, they automatically trigger anytime you remove your taser or your gun. So if they get caught off guard and don't have time to put their taser on or put their camera on, as soon as the gun is pulled out of the holster or the taser is pulled out of the holster, it immediately turns on.
Is that the early warning detection?
This early warning detection will be another thing that we'll talk about. So, those two things alone are pretty impressive to have, but I think it's definitely time that we need to increase our cameras. Because even in the last 3 months, I've utilized the camera system just for an officer complaint. And luckily, the camera was on, because that was my biggest fear, right? When I get a complaint and I can't argue that the officer was in the right, because sometimes the cameras might not work. So this is a much better system for that. Luckily, that camera did work. It showed the officer did exactly what it was, what they were supposed to do. The allegations were completely false, and I solved it within 3 days, and we put that to bed. The early warning detection is another add-on. That's going to be a takeaway from another budget item that we pay for now. What that is a state mandate of it's a database that tracks officers, essentially their mental health, to understand. It tracks the amount of scenes, challenging scenes they've been on, and just gives police administration indicators of what might be something that might be challenging for that officer to deal with. So that's what that system is. This TASER contract comes with that system, so it's all inclusive with what it is, and it'll provide that, so we don't have to use the other system, which they're not real crazy about the current system they're using anyway. So that's what that early warning detection is. It's a software to help just track essentially big scenes for officers, just to see if there's any issues, to give us a heads up before they become an issue. This also, again, this includes the training for the tasers, includes all the supplies, the cartridges, and it's the top of the line tasers that they have currently. Did I miss anything, Chief?
Did a great job. We can talk about it as a committee. It's clear cut to me. I would suggest the committee gives a recommendation to Matt for some guidance to the city to move forward with this. I mean,
Yeah, like I said, I've included it in this budget, and then I'll send it out separately in an email this week, just because I'd like. And the reason I do that is, with it being a 5-year lease, I think it's appropriate to always have council vote on any leases that extend past your election, because if there is a penalty. So we would start this 5-year lease, and then a year later, a new council decides, hey, that's a waste of money, we don't want that, there's a penalty involved. So I always want to have council approve those. So that's why I would ask in May to go ahead separately from the budget. It's not required. I mean, Mayor and I can enter into these contracts, but I think it's most appropriate to show, hey, council, this is the long term. This is what we're saying today. I want to make sure everybody's good with this 5-year lease at this number. That way, if council changes and they go against it, I can at least say, hey, look, council, we brought this to them. We are paying this penalty now because they wanted it. Does that make sense? What's that? Not right now. We'll do it at May. The May council meeting is all we need. But I want to give everybody an opportunity to take a look at this, because there's a lot of money, but we have been running on a low budget for this, and all the departments that have utilized this, I haven't heard anything negative about it. The prosecutors love it, because this is a system now, instead of, right now what it's required is the PD has to download it, upload it, and then send it for Commonwealth Attorney or the county attorney. This way, they actually just have a log into the system where they can access the files that we want them to have. So it's seamless, not to mention the quality, but the prosecutors definitely prefer this system.
Are there other, you mentioned Southgate, those are more than just Southgate around here that uses it?
Before I left my last city, we did this as well, because we were doing the same thing. It was just trying to fumble through an on-site and an off-site server and trying to run the cameras ourselves, it became a nightmare of not only cost, but just manpower of having to monitor that, having to make sure that the servers are. So that's what they're doing right now, and this will completely eliminate that. I don't know what other departments have it around here.
Almost everyone in Campbell County is running to go to Exxon plan. We're playing catch up to get where we need to be.
Is there an opportunity to do a group discount if everybody came together? And
I don't know.
We could look into it at the Chiefs Association level, but maybe.
There's so much customization, I don't know that everybody would get on the same page about what they wanted, honestly.
All right, yeah, that makes sense.
Pretty much everybody I work with, obviously I do a lot of criminal defense work. I've been getting Axon for years now, in the majority of my cases. And we don't have it here in Fort Thomas. It's a big deal, absolutely.
And there's definitely many more options that told me no to. So I think this is a very good plan, and it definitely, again, makes me more comfortable with liability. I mean, one good shooting this really helps out.
My understanding is that as the equipment improves, the equipment upgrade is part of this.
Correct.
Since it's a lease. If you've got a potato going bad, we're gonna get an upgrade to the latest.
Correct.
That's what I was gonna say. So that annual rate is locked in for the life of the lease?
Correct, for 5 years.
And yeah, Chief and your staff, thanks for putting this together, and Matt for explaining it. I always find this stuff interesting because you think you're involved with the city, and I had no idea that we have some of the deficiencies in some of the equipment that are really critical to you guys being able to do your job. So that's amazing. It seems like something that's probably overdue.
If anyone any council members want to test it out, $35, and they'll let you test it out. That's what the cartridge costs. All right. Yeah, taste and film. Yeah. If you want to give it a whirl, it's good. Okay. Any questions about PD? Those are all the major items from the police department. Okay, we'll move on to fire department expenditures. Again, these two pages are general increase in salary benefits for the contract. And then we can, if you still have your capital budget, we can go through that as well after you've taken a look at any of those. And really, the capital budget, the only large item is the ladder truck for $1.5 million that should be delivered during this next budget year. And then we will surplus, because of that purchase, if you remember, we will be surplusing the current ladder truck and another pumper. So the 2 trucks will go out, 1 will come in, because that new truck will take the place of those 2 trucks. And then we just got the grant for the SCBA refill tanks, which is really the only reason we have that other pumper, is because it has the tank refill on it. And now that fire department got that $50,000 or $60,000 grant, they'll be able to refill their tanks here in the bays, and we can get rid of 2 trucks that way. Any questions about fire? Okay. Next line is recreation and armory. We will, like I said, we're making a lot of progress. In this budget, we will be painting the interior of the the mess hall, possibly exterior as well, the windows and the ceiling. We're replacing lighting and fans along with the HVAC system right now. We're also going to be redoing the doorways that are not in good shape for the mess hall right now. Armory as well, we'll be replacing the front of the armory, the avenue side. You probably can't tell, but it is shifting the whole wall. The center block now is actually sinking. So we are going to be removing that in-house and replacing it to be more like it was originally. So we've done a lot of research. When I say we, the staff has done a lot of research to find out what it looked like, and they're going to be building that to essentially hand building that to make it look more like the original, to get it structurally sound and more secure for both the mess hall and the armory.
Where was that?
And the front, so the front side, the avenue side, the midway side of the armory. If you look at it, you might not even pay attention. It's block, and it was added years ago, but that is sinking now, which is causing the door to stick and a whole bunch of other issues. So between Greg and Public Works, they're going to remove that whole front. They're going to fix the concrete inside. It'll be a step, more of a step now, but it needs to be that way, and then the front will be similar to what it was originally. So it'll look a lot nicer, and it'll be a lot more secure and usable to be able to actually enter it as well. Right now, it's tough to close and tough to open. But so just as a kind of reminding council, a lot of that is being updated right now, and there's still some of that in these budgets. Along with the armory is now that we've moved out, and we've done that large surplus of equipment and everything that's been in the armory. I'd like to get the game room to be rentable again and actually have it a game room. So we do have $25,000 in the budget this year for equipment, and that to actually get it to be a game room that includes foosball, golden tee, pinball, ping pong table, pool table, pop-a-shot, and cornhole is what's going to make up that. So it's actually going to be, when people rent it, there's actually stuff to do, and we can accurately call it a game room now. So that's why that's in there, and along with the floor, I don't know if you remember it, there's a lot of 1/2 to 1 inch floor issues that are huge trip hazards, and that's another thing we want to try to knock out this next budget year to get that to be a much safer area, but also more usable and better for renting. And that's the big expense for. And then we'll go ahead down the bottom of the capital budget is the mess hall windows to finish up. We have almost all of the windows done, but just to finish up the rest of the windows in the mess hall, replace the tables that are there, and then I'm not sure why the fitness committee is added to that, but it's to get building.
Because it's in that line.
Okay, so the fitness committee, that's the money to replace fitness center equipment in the basement.
Yeah,
Yeah, just the annual.
we always budget one major piece of equipment. And in the past, the fire department could speak to it. We used to get equipment from the state fire commission because other departments would get the equipment and then proceed to not use it. So it would be reallocated to the city of Fort Thomas. The fire commission has apparently stopped doing it. So this line is going to be a little more crucial when it comes to replacing equipment, because I think we'll actually have to start buying things.
Any questions about the armor of the mess hall this coming year?
What did you say was going to go in the game room? Part of that 25,000?
Foosball, table, a golden tee.
That's
electric.
okay.
Yeah, and then pinball,
And
ping
arcade
pong. Yeah, arcade game. So
That'll be awesome.
there'll be a lot of them, yes. And they've done a good job of tracking these. I've done a used pool table, ping pong table guy that saved some money on that as well. So we're definitely doing as much as we can with that money. Yeah, so regardless, by the end of this fiscal year and next fiscal year, you should see a drastic improvement of mess hall and the armory, which I think is what we're looking at, along with the city, like we talked about. That's one thing we're trying to make sure there's a visible difference now.
Is there insulation above that drop ceiling in the mess hall?
I didn't set them up for that question.
Insulation, I mean, the answer is yes. It's tin. There's also a tin, and then there's the rafters.
What about, like, is it 10 nice looking, I'm sure?
No, oh, it's beautiful. It's vintage,
Could it be nice?
rusted out and old. No. We've, like I said, the last 6 to 9 months, we've done a lot of work, and we would love to do better with the ceiling, but even the ones that were kicking me about keeping it cheap, it makes the most sense is just to paint the tiles that are there, which is what we're doing now, is we're actually going to paint them black instead of even replacing them, because we just replaced the tiles how many tiles were there? I counted them. They're
Oh
all-
my goodness, so fun.
It was like 80,000 just to
Are there a lot of roof leaks or something in the stadium?
No, just because they don't look nice. I mean, we're doing so much other interior work that we're just trying to make it look nice, and we finally settled to paint the ceiling grid and tiles black, which is much cheaper, and they were just the tiles were just replaced.
Actually,
4 to
after,
6 years ago.
actually, after we replaced the roof, honestly.
Yeah, so it's all in good shape. There's really no other option. I mean, if we remove the grid and we've looked at all of it, I mean, there's just
I've talked to him
There's
about
just no-
exposing that ceiling.
To get rid of the drop ceiling.
And him and, I don't know who else looked at it, but it was multiple conversations to see if it was an option. And every time we went back to something else, it just wasn't work.
it's just
Mostly because of the HVAC piece.
Oh.
Yeah, 'cause that's where a lot of that stuff's housed. I think it'd be great to have it exposed.
we love to, but and that's obviously was one of our goals. It's just financially just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that was
Hundreds of $1,000s just to do that. So, but it's gonna look really nice.
They are replacing the fan.
Yes.
Would you like us to just give that to you afterwards, as a memento?
All right, on to the parks and green space expenditures. Again, the 2 pages here involves the salary increases, and then if you look over at the capital budget, the pickleball courts, we dropped from 600 to 500. Pretty confident we can get it in that with the current bid. We have kiosk signs just throughout town. We're still improving. The statue that we're still waiting on won't be done till the spring. So it should be, but actually, I'm sorry, I was telling you, we let it in. That will be out of this next budget. It should come from the Louisville Foundry by March or April of next year. Some things ahead of us, unfortunately, which is taking time. Carlisle Stormwater, that's the analysis we're doing right now with the state to fix the drainage issues there at at Carlisle Park. Again, that's the full amount. We are expecting state and SD1 to be participating in that. Shelter 1 HVAC, that's allowing the shelter at the new playground to be open year-round, so we don't have to winterize it. So that's a small expenditure, but it's going to be a huge impact for everybody. Mayfield turnaround, the Highland Park entrance there, we are going to be redoing that. We're making the parking lot there actually look nice as the entrance to the park, and actually improving the turnaround that we've talked to the residents there that, initially we were going to take that out, but from talking to the residents that live on Mayfield, it's pretty important to be able to have a drop off there without having to go all the way to the end. So that's part of that we're going to be taking care of. I've included the scope statue in here. I know I've talked to everybody about that in the past. That's a $30,000 project that is laying in Goldie parking lot right now that we moved from Hosea's parking lot. So that's one that, for me, you want to get it off my plate if I have any more feedback from council, but that cost is what it's going to cost to elevate it 10 feet off the ground and have it sitting in Highland Park, back by the cul-de-sac. So it's a high number. We've looked at it a lot of different ways, but we need to get it up high for safety, and it has to be engineered. We already paid for the engineering drawings because it needs to be done right instead of just reliability purpose. So we already have that drawings, but that's the bid, the latest bid that we've gotten on getting that installed. I have been working with Ken Bowman to get donations to compensate some of that. But it's only been a couple $1,000s at this point.
I know it's not part of this budget, but I've noticed up at Highland Park and Tower Park, I mentioned to you, the bathroom shelters look great, the new bathroom shelters.
Yep, yeah, those are things that we just started. We had some money left over this year, and that Tim wanted to go ahead and start doing that. So all those structures are new, and they've been increased in size because we're putting handicap toilets in those structures. So
And I think we probably figured out the scheduling issue with emptying and cleaning those porta lots. I remember that this was like last summer. we
It
had-
sounds like we did.
I think we have, because I haven't-
Has anybody heard any complaints?
I'll wait till it starts getting warm again.
Well, that's true.
Right. I mean, but we were getting them almost year-round previously, and I've not heard anything. I mean, the majority of them come to us
Yeah.
in finance, and I've not heard anything.
Have we given a number on like what the donations for the scope statute that we would need to do it? Or?
Nope. The council wants to give me that, and I can give that as a target.
Generally speaking, I'm just not, I mean, we've talked about this, I'm not a huge fan of somebody saying, hey, I've created this beautiful piece of artwork and here I'm going to donate it to you, the city, and if you can spend $30,000 or $40,000 to put it out for me, you know?
You know my feelings on this as well.
It's not this specifically, although that's what we're talking about, but it's in
Right.
general.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this was a great idea in the beginning, and I don't know if anybody really knew how much it was going to cost to get it to be utilized. So I'm completely open to council's guidance on this. I'm just presenting everything to you guys.
So we have not, the work has not begun on that, it's just, we
Correct.
recorded it as a placeholder in the budget.
It is laying in Goldie's parking lot right now, and I've spent $800,000 to get the design to move forward, just to make sure that it's structurally sound if it goes up that high. We just want to make sure.
800 to 8,000.
$800 to $1,000.
What did you think I said?
Not $800,000.
Yeah. No. Sorry. I was wondering, like, that's really not that much, Andy. Yeah. No. Thank you for. Sorry, I think that's twice now. I've increased your blood pressure on this. My apologies. I put you closer to me. I was hoping that would be helpful, but maybe it's better not. So yeah, if you guys want to think about that and get back with me, or how, any questions you have, you can go take a visit of the statue if you want to set that up with me. It's up by the stables in Tower Park.
Yeah, a little one-story frame garage there next to the stables up in Tower Park.
And to be fair too, for history on it, you might want to talk to Ken, or if there's any questions, you want to kind of understand the process and why this is appearing here. I'm not suggesting one way or the other, but Ken has a little history on it.
He does. Yep. All right, the next project is the Tower Park tennis courts. I've been working with Sarah Beasy, who engaged me probably about 6 months ago, and all the soccer parents, the tennis parents has been extremely helpful in meeting with me and getting quotes for upgrading the courts there. We did redo them a few years ago. Apparently this is something that needs to be completely redone I've got the schedule. I'm thinking every 4 to 6 years, 5 to 6 years is what we need to get on these courts. So everything right now, since I've been here, I'm just trying to get into a good maintenance schedule. Vehicles, parks, just instead of us, refinishing something and waiting until we get enough complaints to do it again, we just need to get it on a good schedule to keep it at a high quality. So we do have that now. The repaving of that is going to be 46 or 48 to 50,000 to get it all redone, get out the cracks, to get it repaved, relined, everything like that. We did a patch job this year before the start of the tennis season to get a decent level for them, but we're looking to improve that whole area, especially now that we've got the pickleball courts there, or we will have those there, and the rest of Tower Park is going to be essentially new. So what I have 150,000 in there. The tennis parents are willing to raise money as well, so they've been at the ready to sponsor each court if that's needed. I don't know if it's needed yet. The 150 is going to be for the surfacing of the upper and lower, and then little under 100,000 is to do fencing around both of them. That fencing is the same since I was a kid. The gates don't shut all the way. It's a lot of money, but I think it's time to go ahead and redo the fencing, get to where the gates are actually usable, where we can secure them. The times that we need to secure them is always a challenge because they don't always close right. But I think with it being a Tower Park, I think it's time to make that area look a lot nicer. And then anything above, what I've told Sarah is anything above the 150 that I'll be asking them to fundraise to be kind of a part of it, so.
Separate from those discussions, I've heard from a few people who wanted the warm-up practice wall out there
That's
usable again. Is that part of
It's
it?
been completed already.
Oh,
Yeah, that was something that the Public Works was able to do a few months ago. That's on that. But I think it's time to go ahead and do this. The group's been great at getting quotes. I mean, they've already got me multiple quotes on fencing and the flooring. I mean, they've been extremely helpful with that and carrying this through. They just brought up a quote for landscape and other things that we'll discuss. But I think it's reasonable for us to pay for the surfacing, the fencing, and then get into an annual contract with that group to maintain it. And then with that 5 to 6 year, whatever, don't quote me on that, but it's about that time to try to get into a good rotation of getting this done, just to keep the investments at a high level. And we'll also, we have upgraded the lighting in there. We're not going to replace poles like we originally discussed, but we are going to get them painted. So we're going to keep the existing lighting poles. The heads on them alone, or the heads on them are fairly new the last couple of years, and the lighting's good. Sarah actually looked at it this week and said that they're good. We just need to dress it up a little bit nicer. So hopefully by the end of this fiscal year, or by the start of next tennis season, it'll be nice. The only additional thing, and don't need an answer from council, is just kind of some policy-wise, or are we going to keep with the pickleball courts being open? Are we going to continue to have it both at Tower Park, or can they go back to having it 6 courts? I know that's something that the tennis parents are interested in because they can host some tournaments, and they've got a big write-up of that I can share as well. But it's just something to be thinking about moving forward. Is once that's complete, do we go back to having it all tennis, or do we still want to do the hybrid? So just something to think about, and I'll follow up with council later on that. Okay, and then the last item there is just the last payment for the soccer complex this year. Along with that that $2.5 million that we'll be transferring through, I will have that documented to make sure we remember that in the next 5 years of why we did the 2.5 2 years in a row. That's not us giving them more money. So just so you're aware that that'll be out there, and I'll have that read into a council meeting just so everybody's clear that the city didn't give them $5.5 million, even though I keep telling Brian that the city's doing that. And that'd be nicer to me. So by all means, use that when you talk to them. All right, General Services Director. I'm sorry, let's skip the Community Center. I think we've talked about that. It's just the standard. General Services Director, again, standards, and then street expenditures.
It's basically me.
Okay. All right, so that's the Public Works. We'll go into details here on the streets here in a second. General Services, garage and other. Again, these are just standard things other than what I'm going to break out. And then property manager. So we'll go back to the other department's capital budget and finish this off with streets. That's also Public Works. If you look at the capital budget. Again, along with discussing the police fleet, we are also, the Public Works fleet is in desperate need of improvements. We've made a lot of progress over the last year in getting vehicles for them. You'll see that their old concrete truck, the concrete crew truck, not the rotating truck, but the concrete crew truck, that could only get to 3rd gear through town. If you heard it driving by, it whines because it's as fast as you could go. We decided to able to replace that this last year. We found a really good deal. It was a $160,000 build. We found it already done for $94,000, and that was purchased, and that eliminated the max of 28-mile-an-hour truck that screamed down the road pulling a trailer. Now it's an 18-foot bed which is a very big truck that they put it all on there, and it's worked out great. So we are making a lot of headway on that, but there's still a lot of public works trucks that we need to replace. One of them is a 2.5-ton Freightliner. That's a dump truck that's also going to be a large plow truck that needs to be replaced. And then 2 3/4-ton gas pickups, non-diesel, that we need to work on or need to replace. So that's three total trucks this year that we've added in that are definitely necessary. If anybody wants, I have plenty of documentation on why it's necessary. We can take a trip down there and you can look through. One of the Freightliners, I mean, the crews down there are incredible. The other month, they completely tore apart the cab of this truck to weld in panels into the floor where about all the rust, because when they were the bigger trucks, when they were plowing, they were getting salt and water in their feet, and they decided they got tired of that. But they welded, did a heck of a job, but we don't need to be doing that. I mean, it absolutely was. So that is one of the Freightliners, and then the other one is another Flintstone. When, you know, last time we did the pumpkin walk, and I have somehow gotten the job of driving the 3/4-ton dump pickup truck, and when I got in, I could see the ground, and I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Oh, they're like, oh, it's fine. It's just, you know, it's only really bad when it rains. I'm like, all right, guys, like, we gotta. So that's 2 of those. I mean, it's just time to. They've done a great job at saving us money and making these things get along, but it's time to start really taking a hard look at these. And we made a lot of progress this year. They're really excited to get these new trucks, and it definitely. Talking to the employees down there, they're very appreciative of actually having trucks that they can be proud of driving around town here. We also have the vehicle lift down there that only goes so high right now, and then they put stuff underneath just to make sure stuff doesn't get smashed by it. It's time to replace that for $14,000. So I think that's important. We have a Freon recovery machine that's with the new vehicles. It's a different kind of Freon that we don't have right now, so that allows Seth to be able to maintain those AC units and get the vehicles out quicker, as opposed to sending them to Dodge now. Also with the scanner, with the new vehicles, the scanner that he has doesn't work with that. So that allows him to really focus on the newer vehicles and not have to kick as much out, because it's been a pretty large turnaround with our cruisers. Also a computer to run those. And then the last thing is the holiday lighting. So that's the other large number there, the 40,000, and I'll get into that. We talked about this last year. The staff has done a lot of research to try to figure out what the best solution of doing that is. We talked about that last time. The staff, the public works getting out there and doing the Christmas lighting, it takes away from a lot of the things they need to be doing in the fall and in the winter and getting ready for the weather. So we're looking at being able to contract that out to allow somebody else to take care of it, and if there are issues, we can make a phone call and have it repaired. So what we've done is we've gotten 3 or 4 quotes, and right now this is the expense that we're looking at. The first year will be $40,000. That will include us purchasing all of the lights, so we'll actually own the lights, and that'll be the installation of everything on the avenue to include the pocket parks. The second year would be $20,000, and the third year would be $20,000. That's just to be installing and for them to store our lights. So in addition to, we're owning the lights, they put them up, they take them down, but they also store them. And they're guaranteed for those 3 years that if there's any of those lights don't work the following years, they will replace. With the understanding that year 4 might have to restart, right? So there might be some lights that need to be replaced, but that would be the goal moving forward in order to keep, to get the lights around the trees that we've been discussing. So that's the budget that we have right now. With that said, I do think that we can start negotiating more with these 3 bids that we received and actually get it lower. But I just wanted to put that the current bid we have right now would be $40,000 the first year, 2020, over to do a kind of a 3-year deal to get us locked in. So that's just want to know, we talked about months ago, I think right after the holidays. It's something that I'm interested in. I think it obviously looks nice in town, and if it's worth it to council, then move ahead with that. So that was the last larger item there on that list. If anybody has any questions or comments on that, and I got all the quotes if anybody would like. They got the increased high from there.
What's the $100,000 difference between the capital expenditure estimate compared to the capital budget?
Which one?
For the, it's, on the front page, it's 3.791 million, and on this one, it's 3.691.
I think you're looking at two different pages. You've got an earlier draft in one hand and a later draft in the other. We actually took.
The pickleball court.
It's the pickleball, it's 100,000 for the pickleball court being amended down, yeah.
Oh, this is the one I printed off. Okay.
Yeah, we made some,
The bid came in.
Little tweaks.
Yeah.
yeah,
Just to make it work.
specifically, it should be $100,000.
I think the holiday lighting, we have talked about it, and it seems like a good idea moving forward for 3 years. It is a lot of money. You may not have a rough figure, but do you have any rough idea of what it costs us currently using our own folks and our own labor and all that? I mean, 20 grand, more or less?
I mean, the amount that what's interesting with us is, I mean, we use a lot of staff time on that, and quantifying the staff time would be difficult, but I mean, they're on it nearly full time for a while.
Right.
Additionally, the amount of additional stuff that we buy every year due to loss, damage, I mean, it's not a ridiculously large amount of money, but it's something that's easily avoidable.
Yeah, I completely agree. It seems like a good thing moving forward, but it's a lot of money.
It is, yeah. But I mean, we spend a lot of time on it, and time may be the
Time is
probably the
money in that
largest single
sense.
component.
Right, yeah. It would be good to have them able to focus on things that are, not that the, festive attractiveness isn't the most important thing, but they can get working on other things too.
Right.
I mean, is it possible that with the free time, that there's a net effect there where there's things that we may be contracting outside that they can now do if they have that free time?
Oh, the goal, well, I mean, that's the goal, and that'll probably touch upon that with the KDOT budget, that, I mean, we're having the sidewalks contracted, so our maintenance employees can do maintenance.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole onus of all this that we've discussed in the last few months, is trying to free up Public Works from doing things like this to be able to actually do what they need to do. The large sections of sidewalk that we're wanting to do on the avenue that we're contracting out this year allows them to not focus on that, but to focus on the trip hazards, the ones that come in throughout, and just all the other stuff, like they're going to be taking down every lamppost in the CBD and on the avenue, take them down completely, sand them all down and repaint them and put them back up. It's a heck of a lot cheaper for us to be able to do that than to replace each of them. But the salt destroys people, walking by can destroy them, and just the weather. So it's just things like that they're going to be able to do this year, and I think you'll see with the way we structured this and the things that we have contracted out allows them to actually do the things that they need to be doing. The typical complaints I get all year, and my answer is they'll get to it when they can, because they're stuck on this, and they can only do these projects during rainy days or nice days, which adds up to their rainy day stuff. They can only do certain things. So
I think it allows us to be much more proactive instead of reacting.
It absolutely is.
Problem.
And reactive is really frustrating.
Kind of makes it, we look a lot more worried into it.
right, absolutely. All right. Where's the page that has the streets? We didn't talk about streets, did we?
We did, that's actually within the, it's actually not within here, it's actually in Kevin's documentation. What specific streets we did?
Here. So you can look through the rest of this, the KDOT fund, that's a change this year with the franchise fee in that, and that fund will actually be a self-funding plan. So all the funds that go into KDOT will fund all the street resurfacing, sidewalk, the planned sidewalk repairs, and all the other things in the street program. So Joe and I are very excited that we're actually going to have a fund that will fund that whole project, and you don't have to keep transferring in every year for that. This is the other fund.
Miscellaneous was?
What's that?
The money coming in from residents?
No.
No, the money coming in
Due
from
franchise.
residents was,
Still going down.
it
On the
was
revenues for KDOT?
So what was the,
street assessments.
what was?
Oh, you mean what was it? Yes.
That miscellaneous, that huge miscellaneous number was Newport's reimbursement for the bottom of Kyle's Lane.
So where did the revenues go previously? Was that just general fund?
The residents
Yeah.
actually went to the street assessment line in this budget. So you'll see it goes, 21, 22 was 145 up to 202.
Oh, okay.
Our budget
Sorry.
original,
Sorry.
and then we wipe that out, and then it's 0 for 24, 25, so.
One second. I'm gonna-
So Joe, is like the 500 in KDOT that comes in under transfers and reserves on the revenue side, does that come from restricted funds? Is that?
It would realistically be a restricted fund. The reason that's still out there for 24, 25 is due to the Rossford Bridge. That's the last vestige of the funding it previously was. So we won't have any more transfers in going forward. That'll be self-sufficient once we get all the franchise fees coming in and actually get to account for it for a while and recognize how much money we actually get.
But that's coming into here, it's coming out of.
It's coming, it's really coming out of restricted funds, yeah, coming out of reserves.
There was like a sheet that like the Rossford Bridge. Here we go. This one didn't get the KDOT breakdown.
Oh, I did one page. Oh.
Very good. Can you go print that real quick?
Yeah, I can actually.
Rossford Bridge is
Sorry
on,
about that.
is on ours.
No,
No,
I had it
actually,
broken.
it's a separate-
I had it broken out just to make it easier for
That I
for
forgot and only
Yeah.
printed one page. No, let me go grab some.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say it's easier for council, it's actually easier for me. So I like the breakouts just because we know it's in the numbers, but this highlights some of the larger items. So I'm gonna have him go print this out, and we'll talk through. One of the nice things about the street program being changed this year is we do have that list that council's already knows about. The streets, Covert Run, Gunpowder, Memory Lane, Pleasant, and Winston Hill. We've had Hanover Place on our list of needing to replace for many years. Whether it was a developer error or just the ground there is challenging. It's been really rough back there. It's off Garden Way. That's one that, we received a lot of feedback this year. Again, we do every year. And it's one that Tim Manley is definitely wants to get done. We've spent a lot of money repairing panels and sections, and it's time to just do a complete rehaul. And that's one thing we've added to the budget this year is to completely do that. That's $240,000. But it's something that we've just nickel and dime this thing for the last 5 years, and it's time to put it to bed and actually do it right. So Joe will have that on here, but that's just another nice benefit that the staff can really take a hard look and say, all right, we've had a lot of citizen input on that one, and they're right, it needs to be done, and we don't have to hold it for another year. We can go ahead and knock it out with the revenue that we have within the KDOT fund now. Additionally, we have the amphitheater road is another part in the street construction part, and that's $35,000. That's to pave that gravel road that goes up to like the sound area or the light area that goes from the green room up. If you've noticed that, it's gravel. So that's going to help on a few things. One, it's going to look a lot nicer. Two, you're going to have less kids, no kids throwing rocks from it during events, which is also nice. Also, this. And then additionally, there'll be more area for people to put chairs up on. Once vehicles can take all the lighting up there now, we can actually use that as more seating when people bring their chairs in a much nicer area. So that's one that we'll have that paid before.
Make sure your copy's good too.
Before merchants. It does require a base, that's why we haven't done it yet. If it was just a paving thing, we would have already done it, but it is going to be required a base, which it doesn't have right now, so.
Are we going to, Matt, are we going to change that sound booth area with this?
No, but that was an update in the last week. I'll give it to you on. I found out more stuff about that.
But doing this road would not.
It would not impact that.
Okay,
So
so
we have
there's still an opportunity If someone has a plan that actually works.
Yes,
Okay, good.
yes. There's some stuff underground there that I wasn't aware of that we need to talk
Okay.
about. But, you know, the amphitheater is one thing I didn't put on any of these future lists. It is something that I brought to council months ago that I wanted to take a look at that and ways to improve that. If we do heavily utilize the amphitheater, obviously, as a city, and looking for better ways to have seating and other things. So that's another thing that'll be in the plan. But again, I didn't include that in the first page just because those are 1 to 2 years that we already had planned, and I don't have a solid plan for that. But this amphitheater road is kind of one step closer to improving the amphitheater area.
Amphitheater roads, the gravel road you're talking about?
Yes, that goes up to that gravel road that kind of goes up to that concrete pad
Yep.
that they set tents up. So
Is there any, this may not be feasible, is there any chance to utilize some of the equipment for the contractors that are there right now, right across the street?
that's what we tried to do, but because of the base, the base that was needed and needing to be cleared out, it needed to be done by July 4th for merchants. Well, once we started getting pricing and I couldn't get the base done in time for July 4th, we're kicking it, but it will be done before merchants. So I'm just trying to get a better price on them than it is right now. So if you look at that KDOT road breakdown, so those are all the streets that we're adding, and we've added Hanover this year because we have the funds for it in the KDOT fund now. And it definitely needs to be done. It's one on our high list of neededs. The contracted sidewalks, the $150,000, that is the avenue. So years ago, there was a plan together that did an analysis on the avenue of what sidewalks need to be replaced, for trip hazard, things like that. Right now, we've been kind of nickel and diming it whenever somebody complains, but again, this is more proactive to take care of that. So that's going to be the contracted sidewalks, and then allow our guys to go and do the other areas around town that need sidewalk repair and not have to focus on bigger projects like this, because these are easier to contract out when you know an area that you're doing. It's much easier to contract out than, ones you don't really know yet until you start getting complaints.
Matt, on the streets here, when Johnson was redone, the section between Waterworks and the turn was left off. And that is in desperate need of repair also. And it's traveled pretty heavily. So is there a reason it's not on this cycle?
Because it's not a desperate need of repair. I know people think that and they say that, but structurally, it's not. It is something that we're paying attention to, but it's definitely not a priority this year. And that's common. I mean, people think that their road's the worst and there's no little roads. And I've heard that since I've been here. And it is something that we'll do earlier than needed just because of where it's at.
Yeah.
But it's probably something we'll look at.
It's traveled pretty heavily, so
Which
that
one are you talking about?
touches a lot. From
Just the avenue.
Waterworks to right just past Johnson, they didn't do that section when they did work for Thomas because of construction.
Oh, okay.
And that was years ago, and it's gotten worse with the construction.
Waterworks up to the end
Thomas Ave, you go from Waterworks towards Johnson, past Johnson. I think it's the next street. That whole section was skid.
Yeah, I don't think we touched it between Waterworks and what is it, Bel Air there? I think that's the section.
Right after construction, they built this apartment. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, it is a small section. Okay, Rossford Bridge is still hanging out there. We just got the Corps of Engineers approval finally to move forward on that. So that has to be done this budget year, I'm hoping. I am looking at grants. I just got denied on one grant that I was hoping to grab that, but there is another state one that we got an email on. I'm hoping to try to get some money for. I don't know. I mean, it needs to be done, but I'm working on that.
I thought I originally were going to use ARPA funds for that, but we said that other part.
Yeah, I mean, that was just we can call it what we want, but when we're doing the ARPA reporting, it's easier to do on the three things as opposed to add all the little small projects in. So,
Okay.
Yeah, there's plenty. I mean, we're spending enough on the park project that's going to eat the rest of the ARPA funds up pretty easily.
Okay.
yeah, definitely easier for reporting to get the bigger projects out of the way, just for ARPA. But that was definitely the intent. It's just a little bit, it's been a little bit more challenging to get that bridge done. It's not a just not an easy thing. So that's in there, and I'm confident we'll get that done this year. And then at the end here, the Midway Southside Engineering to talk about putting the underground utilities. We've already discussed that, and the plan for that will be this year. So we'll hopefully be able to fund that next year if the plans come in good and council agrees to it.
And you said this at the beginning of the meeting, that project, assuming it moves along the way it should, is a 3-year process or 2 to 3?
If you include this year, I'd say
Including
3.
engineering?
Right, because what it would be is, I mean, if we're moving quickly, it'll be, this year it'll be design, next year will be utilities, and next year will be full construction. That's generally, a project like that is how you want to do it.
And that's CT doing that work?
Correct. Well, they'll be doing, yes, they're doing the design. Correct. And then, just so council is aware, you know, I've had this conversation with a lot of people this month when we've been getting quotes and talking to them about projects. And the reason I ask you is just to make sure you're checking in case I miss it but when I bring a project to you, kind of like the scope statue, the staircase, things like that, the tennis courts even, we really need to be focusing on what's the cost of the analysis, the estimated cost of construction, and then the cost of maintenance, right? Because there's no point in starting the analysis if council's not comfortable with the cost of doing it, right? And then if we do it, we need to make sure that we all know what the maintenance is going to be, and we need to keep up on the maintenance, because if we spend this much money and then we don't do anything and it only lasts 10 years, if it's 15 years, it's a waste of money too. So hopefully moving forward, I'm giving you all those numbers, but if I don't, you know, please check with me on that. For example, the trails, I met with a group, this Cora, who wants to improve Tower Park trails, which is great. You know, that's an awesome thing. They want to do a $20,000 analysis, which I'm like, okay, that's a lot of money. If, you know, I want to see what the analysis is really going to show us, and then what do you think that cost is going to be? Because if that cost is too much for trails, then why don't do the analysis? And then additionally, if we do these trails, I mean, you guys can all imagine if you don't do any upkeep on dirt trails, they can easily, you know, fall apart in 5 years. So now we need that. So they actually did, I think they said that to me last week, just didn't make it. But that's what they gave me, is the full amount of this is what the analysis is, what it's going to look like, this is what we're estimating, and then this is how much it is year to year, and this is who you can do, or you can pay to do that. Because again, trail maintenance is not something I want staff to do. We don't have the knowledge that these other groups do, and I want to have a group that we can get into an annual budget where they go in there and they identify what areas need to be replaced and keep that long. So just kind of want to get that in. It's just easier for council to know all that ahead of time. Is definitely easier for me, and that way all the expectations are there and nobody gets shocked by a bill at the end or something.
So thinking about that, in the future planned expenses on the first page under the restricted funds, I agree with all of these projects. So, is a vote for this budget, does that mean you also have to have a vote to spend the money?
Yes.
I'm not asking for a vote for these future planned expenses. These are just letting you know what's in my brain. This is Matt's brain right here.
Curious.
It's a small, very small, unscary section. The rest of it I don't put on paper.
I get it.
So if we did touch on this fiscal year, obviously,
So this is,
You'll put together each of these separately.
right, so I think we have a very healthy plan for this year. Everything that is in the budget this year, I'm very confident that staff can handle it. So if we get to a point where I finalize these plans to a level that we can move forward, even in the middle of the year, even though I don't like doing that, but with coming in kind of, you know, I've been here 2 years now, there's a whole lot of these plans have been kind of hanging out there. I would like to accomplish all these because I think these are all good projects. So even though I would prefer to wait till next year to fund these, if I see a good opening, if I see staff can handle it and the needs there, I will bring it in mid to at least ask you guys if you guys want to push it. By all means, we can push it. But when I get to the level that we can go to bid or prepare documents to go to bid, then I'll get your approval for all of those.
So we would vote on a budget amendment in that case, and we would move money from the restricted funds into the...
Correct. Absolutely. But again, I don't want to put it in the budget unless I know we're going to, I don't like having stuff in the budget that I'm not going to complete. It bothers me. And there's always gonna be that, because things are gonna come up, but these are all, this is the list that I'm definitely gonna be working on the next 12 months that may come early, but if not, they'll be included in next year's budget. All right, so that was the KDOT breakdown. And are these good for you guys to see these? I just think that's easier than going line by line. You get kind of a big summary, and then you can see where it correlates in the pages beforehand. So the health insurance fund, we're self-insured. It's an incredible benefit for retention and recruiting, and works out really well. Gives us the flexibility we need for healthcare expenses. That fund is doing well, and that's on there. Debt service fund, that's our debt for the city building and / parks. Again, debt service, CBD fund. The CBD fund are the events. So that's, again, that was one of those funds when I got here. We had a whole bunch of stuff in there. So this year, we're getting closer and closer to making that really essentially our parks fund, or I'm sorry, our events fund.
Matt, I noticed we have almost 50,000 additional budgeted this year for merchants and music, and I know talking to Chanda last year, I think I understand why that is, but can you just quickly?
Yeah, so it is a 20-year, it's our 20 years, so we are trying to do a little bit more with this year. Expenses have definitely gone up. The musicians just since COVID have skyrocketed. The merchants, and just so council understands, merchants and 4th of July is extremely challenging budget-wise for staff, because if you can imagine, July 4th is the event, right? And I get a new budget July 1st, but I have to spend money before that, right, to make that event happen. So it's always just a leapfrog, right? Last year's money is being spent on this year's event, essentially. So that's those two are very challenging, and the amount that's there, we've never hit. The events have always done a really good job at saving money. We've found lots of savings. It's really this is the max it would possibly cost us, but we've already gotten a really good deal on the musicians, and just a lot of stuff. We came in under budget, but things are getting. Our first round of fireworks, I think it was doubled. But Chanda talked them down and got them back down to actually where we were with the same amount. So it's just, there's a whole lot of that. They're very good at working on that. But yeah, it is increased, and it's a lot because of the 20-year this year. And I do expect that to drop down next year.
What additional renovations are going to the city building? 450?
I think that was last year.
That's just an amended amount for this year. We had anticipated the end of that project in 22-23, and we actually, because everything was delayed, we actually had 2 more payments come out this year. So we just amended that on there. We may end up, it's difficult to project how those things are going to happen, especially where we're sitting right now. It's the same thing with the same thing with the park project up at Town Park. We have anticipated to end by June 30th, no questions asked. There's a pretty reasonable possibility that we're going to pay out the rest of that after July 1. We'll just amend it on there. It's not, it's pretty standard.
Any other questions about the CBD fund? And the reason we haven't renamed that, just so everybody's aware, that does have a funding source that we're still working through. I'm hoping to make some changes by next year, but it's not something that's simply renamed and changed just because it does have a funding source to it. And then the last page is the waste fee fund, which we all know it has gone up with the new contract this year, but it's going well. I'll check my list here to make sure I captured everything. Yeah, Joe brought up that we don't have that annotated in the budget just because it's trying to make it cleaner and less complicated, but there are probably going to be some expenses for Tower Park that are roll into next year's budget if they don't complete by June 30th. There won't be anything large, most likely, because they're pretty far along, but just so council's aware, that'll be part of the budget next year. We could put a number in there, but I think it inflates things unnecessarily. But I can do what council wants. If you would prefer us to put them out and make an educated guess, we can do that. But I think the way we've been doing it and kind of letting council know the changes throughout the year, I think it's the best way to do that. The walking path, I think I did cover, that cost. It might be something I bring up, and if council is not interested in that path, I mean, I know I brought it up to everybody, if it's something that doesn't interest you that much, I know some have been extremely interested in it, I just don't think it's at the tune of $94,000. So once I do a little bit more work with those contractors, see if I can get it down, I will probably bring that back to council here in the next couple months, just to see what the,
What's the length of the thing?
it's a quarter mile.
And I have a question about that too, just because we've talked about it a little bit, and it seems on its face like an excellent idea to do. Now the money is a different story. That's not something our folks can do.
No, because it's a 5-foot asphalt path.
Yep.
So it's going to need it's going to need a gravel base, 1.5 inches, asphalt base, and 1.5 inches base. Frank and I talked a lot about this. We can try to do it cheaper and maybe only do a 2-inch lift instead of a 6-inch lift, but I just don't think it's something that we skimp. With the topography there, with the amount of people, I think we do it right, and that way we know it's going to last us for 20 years or more. So I'm not comfortable with any of the reductions right now. We are, one of the bids, they just came in way too high, and their statement was, well, we think there's going to be a lot more groundwork than what you guys have said. So we're talking to them. The other one, we're just talking to see what we can do in order to get it cheaper. The county also has a paving machine now that they purchased for cart paths. So that's another option to be able to use. And I actually have a group this week that I'm going to meet with that would essentially just do the base, that would level it off. What they specialize in is doing a gravel trail. So I'm trying to get a price on there to see if I can have them do that, and then that way we only have to pay to have it paved after that, which might save us some money. So I don't think it's dead, but I'm just not comfortable pulling the trigger on $94,000. I think we can do it cheaper. So again, I also don't want to throw it in this budget right now, just because I'd be guessing what it would be. And if I put $50,000 in here and it's $55,000, I prefer to wait and bring it to council once I can get the full amount to get some good numbers. I don't like to keep guessing on stuff like that that have a lot of variables. But I do think we have I'd say a path forward, but we have a way forward on that. I know you'd like that, but I think we do have a way forward on that.
Matt, did Frank include any under drains in the design of that or not?
No under drains. We actually bid this out as a group. I mean, if you actually look at the actual bids, it's much higher because we actually bid out the pathway for the tennis courts as well, to redo that whole pathway from the top all the way down to the lower level, which was a lot more money, which is not included in the 150 right now. So yeah, we're looking on. We have a couple of different options to be able to add that on to other projects in the park later on that might lower it. So, and I also like the fact that they know we're rejecting bids, so we're not going to just take anything that they ask. So I'm hoping that lets them know that as well. But we'll still work through that. I think unless council change their mind on that, I think it's a great project to get people back in the woods who maybe struggle on regular paths, and strollers, walkers, even wheelchairs could be able to use it. I need to double check my list here. Christmas lights. One thing I did leave off on the mayor's budget, we have included adding a taking a part-time into a full-time assistant to help with events. It would be kind of a half farmer's market, half events project. So that would be about a $30,000 increase in that position, but that'll give us a lot more flexibility, because right now, I mean, if you've seen staff during prior events a month before, I mean, they're running crazy. So we have a healthy amount of events this year, and it's definitely time to start adding some staff to help out with that. In addition, that allows Sam to focus a little bit more on communications and social media as opposed to doing some of the events. So that is one thing we'd like to add this year, and I think it's definitely a good add. I've talked about that since I've been here. We're definitely understaffed, but I also want to make sure the staff we're adding are good adds, not something that we're a couple years down the road, we wish we would have done something differently, because I don't like to lay people off just because of bad kind of staff management on that. So I think that's a good plus, but I just wanted to bring that up, that it is a $30,000 increase this year. And there probably will be more moving forward. It's just, again, we've done, in the last 6 months, Joe and I have done a lot of restructuring within the city, just staff-wise, nothing that anybody else would see, but just supervision and different changes that are helping the operation. And now that we've done that and watched that for a little bit longer, I'm sure there's going to be other positions that we think we're probably comfortable adding for that. Any questions about that? Okay, and then, yeah, the other thing was the armory. So that's everything on my list, unless council.
Well, I'll just say, I mean, you guys are hitting your stride as far as working together, and this is the 4th year that I've been a part of this process, and it keeps getting more efficient. This in particular, I really appreciate the project breakdowns, kind of the cover sheet, that's helpful. And I think the conversation today was probably as in-depth as we've had, which is really important. And so thanks for all the preparation work. And do you guys have any?
Yeah, no, thank you.
No, it's great. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Again, we'll be taking a look at this. There might be some minor changes. I'm trying to get the budget as clean as we can. And when you start in April, we're still waiting on bids and trying to get additional bids, because anything over, as much as it's annoying sometimes, but anything over $5,000, I want at least three bids for, which involves a lot. And then goes even more, the higher goes up. So we're still, even though a couple of these projects we have 1 or 2, we're still trying to get multiple bids. So there might be some projects that come in cheaper. We might change some of the scope. Obviously, any changes to today's document that you got handed out, I'm gonna email this to you today, because it is a revision from Friday, just so you guys maintain the current revision. And then any additions, I'll obviously send out, and we'll discuss moving forward. But that's.
Just out of curiosity, have you ever used any of the bidding and services?
I have.
Work out at any time?
I have. Are you talking just the companies that?
Bid out a project for you.
Well, the problem is a lot of those, and you can tell me if you have any specifics. A lot of those are just ones that you have all the bid documents ready, and they seek out more people, is what they say. Because regardless, we have to get all the construction drawings and things to get to that
So they're like
process.
a facilitator more.
Right. And we've done pretty good at, we don't just send out a bid and put it on the website. I mean, we reach out to the ones that we know are available, right? Which I think
Yeah, I was
is
just saying,
really
as far as
important.
relieving
Right.
some work of you, where that's
Right. Yeah, so I have used that successfully, but it's little niches that you may not have a lot of people around here that'll do that work, that'll help, things like that. So I have seen that as an advantage. But sometimes it gets to be more work because you're having to give them more information than you normally would. So, yeah, but we've done pretty good at getting good bids. We actually, with the pickleball, we had a new vendor that we haven't had in a while, which was nice just to see. I like to see new names coming out. And then same thing with the trail. So I've been real happy that I think we've been getting the word out enough to get some new construction companies into the mix. I like to see that.
Now, I actually have to go, so I'm way past my time, but is there anything critical that needs to be discussed while I'm here?
No, my only point was that there might be some changes, that'd all be minor to be
Never
nothing.
gonna do that after that.
And we were kind of, he told me to kind of kill time until you get out of here.
Jeff,
So I've been trying to do that.
I just want to ask a favor of the committee. As we digest this and you talk to people and we all, if issues come up or people in the community bring things to your attention that are concerning or that would be nice to know, I'd like if we could kind of at least have a dialogue before we get to a council meeting, just because I don't like to be surprised. I don't have any concerns, but I want to make sure that we share amongst ourselves the concerns that we hear, the compliments or the things that are good or bad,
Yeah, and of course, we want to hear it,
Right,
because
right.
we can either justify it, or I'll say, oh, we didn't even think about that. So the quicker we hear that, the better. The plan is to have first reading in May. If council is comfortable with everything here, after you listen today, you've digested this, I'm sure you'll have more questions like normal. So once we get through this, I'll kind of shoot out an email a couple weeks before the council meeting if we want to have another finance committee meeting, if we just want to push to June. I just prefer if we get to a rotation where May, we have first reading, June we have second. We don't need that extra June meeting unless something big comes up. And it definitely makes me more comfortable than waiting till the last month to get a budget passed, just for my well-being. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.